you've got some pretty crazy projects to tell us about.
The core thing that we're doing at the moment, which is Violet's Dream, is actually a spin-off from a video game that's been released later on this year. And I know some of the people who've actually been playing and following the whole narrative to a certain degree are slightly nonplussed, and the fact is oblivious to them to a certain degree, because we've got no tie-in to a certain point with the actual product that is funding what we're doing. Violet's Dream kind of looks at one of the main areas of interest within Velvet Assassin, which is the computer game, based on a World War II heroine called Violet Sabo, who sabotaged a lot of the Nazi machine in Germany. Museums and lots of stuff dedicated to her memory. And the film Carve Her Name with Pride, which featured Virginia McKenna, was actually based on her life story. Over lunch or dinner one day, got together with the gang in London, and they said, hey, we got this amazing thing, not sure what to do with it. And an hour and a half later, we concocted this whole thing, assuming, to a certain degree, that we can create this alternate reality, which tells a story of this character who not only sabotaged the Nazi machine, but also repurposed Nazi gold so that any agent caught in occupied France could bribe their way out of trouble. And because this whole the whole mechanism in those days was mainly based on puzzles and codes, we worked out that there were certain key codes and puzzles that weren't passed back to the UK, which gave an indication of where certain elements of gold were. And the people who funded the project thought it was amazing. You're going to start giving gold away, and we said yes. Now, I can't go into too much detail because a lot of the stuff is still being played out right now, but we created this alternate reality, a complete narrative. The tail end is the actual computer game, but we've kind of taken from the tail end and we've told the story all the way up to date. People don't know what the computer game is, as a matter of fact. It's still being tested right now. Even I haven't seen much of it. So not only have we created stuff that sits within the game, you buy the game, you'll be able to play, you actually engage with the ARG. We've actually created a whole narrative that leads away from the game. Loads of trouble, loads of hassle, developing the narrative, making sure it ties in with what the other guys are doing, because the actual developers are in Hamburg. But then we brought a lot of people to the table with this whole idea that their codes and their puzzles, and there's something out there. Took into account that the moment you mention gold, people start getting a little bit hysterical. It's one of those emotive sort of minerals. So up till when someone found a bar of gold about a week and a half ago, there really was no clear indication that there was anything there at all. And we kept it at that. We alluded to there could be something. And playing that game with not just the developers, but the players to a certain degree also meant we had the opportunity to actually not so much educate, but to write a storyline that actually told the tale of the special operations executive based on the real story of these women who were, very, very instrumental in smashing the Nazi machine. And we had several different areas that we set up. You had the replay blog that was mainly dedicated. The Replay Studios developed the game. The replay blog was mainly dedicated towards telling the story of these women. But then you had other elements tied across the board, various companies and various other bits that to a certain degree just had no link to what was going on. And we're still doing it now.
That's great.
Can I ask you?
Yeah, sure.
Yomi, do you mind? I'm fascinated by the concept that, holy crap, you've actually hidden gold bars, multiple ones around the world. Can you just talk a little bit more about the logistics of that? Where do you hide these things? How do people find them?
How can we find them?
Where's the next one?
In as much detail as possible.
The first find, and as I said, a lot of this is historically based. The first find was in Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg is in Texas. Has a very, one of the oldest German settlements in America. And we decided that was possibly the first path we should take, trying to tie together not just the game itself, but the whole history, and make it seem as real to life as possible. We purchased 2 vintage German hardback books, which we scribbled a whole load of stuff in UV ink in, and we placed them in an antique bookstore in Fredericksburg, and they sat there for the best part of 3-4 months with instructions on anyone, once people players get to that point, they can phone up and they'll say, yes, we have got this book in stock, but it's reserved for someone. The first book had part of the clue, the second had the other half. So they were willing to ship the first book to anywhere in the world, but to get the second, you had to turn up in person. So we actually opened it up that much. Unfortunately for the person who went down, the lady went down with her 2 children, the whole family, and did a 5-hour round trip, smashed all the clues, smashed everything, beautifully done, documented everything on camera, but got both books and thought, well, it was a lost cause. It wasn't until she went home and she went through 3 months of narrative that she just stumbled across something to do with notes, banknotes, and a UV pen. Then she got out her black light pen and it all unfolded. And that's how she kind of found out that there was something there. I mean, hiding gold is not hard. As a matter of fact, finding gold is not as hard as it seems. But convincing someone to cough out, and it was a bit of a head trip for them. We said, we're not giving away a house. We're not giving away a computer game, a console. As a matter of fact, we're not giving away anything tied to the reason why you funded our project. You know, it's so far from that. We're just going to give away solid gold bars. And no one else has done that before. And we thought, yeah.
That's great, thanks. Lance, maybe you could tell us a little bit about maybe one of your recent projects.
Sure. Well, 2 different things. Head Trauma was the last film that I made, and it had come out, we released it in 17 cities theatrically, and then it was out on DVD. And then I wanted to play with the way the windows of release work. And a lot of ways, typically, at that point, your film goes out to television or cable or whatever, and kind of, or in a lot of cases, doesn't do anything. So I decided I wanted to kind of do a cinema remix around the film. So I basically created these events, and I inverted the whole theatrical model. So I went from doing like a 50-50 split with all the venues to getting a minimum guarantee before I walked in the door. So people were paying me about $5,000 to bring the live event to the actual space. So I knew I was making money before I even stepped in, and then I had them do a split with me. And what we did in the live event was we took the movie and pulled away the music track, and I had bands rescore the film live. And then characters from the movie emerge from the audience. It's a psychological horror film. And then we wrote some software, because I have a partner and we do a lot of computer stuff. We wrote some software that allowed us to do unified messaging. So people could sit in the audience and actually interact with the film via their mobile phone. So the characters would text them and call them, and then after everything ended, the movie would like follow them home, and we'd build a whole extensive world online, through an interactive comic. And basically when they came back and they put in their phone number and they'd start going through the site, we would know that they were there, and we'd call them. So the nemesis from the film would call them on the phone. And so they'd answer the phone, and he'd start asking them these questions. And based upon the response that they gave, we would send triggers and launch things on screen. So like he would say, tell me something about you that nobody knows. In that particular instance, we would actually capture the audio from them, loop it back over the speakers of their computer, build a fake like exit box, so when they hit that, we know they were hitting that instance, and we deliver a message over the phone that said, where do you think you're going? We're not finished yet. So we really kind of played with and toyed with them, and built like a variety of like crazy software that allowed us to do that. So when it